You are 63 pages into a merger agreement when the email comes in. It is a Wednesday, 2:18 in the morning. The office is quiet in the way corporate offices are always quiet. Filtered air moving through vents you never see. Soft lighting that never fully turns off. The low mechanical hum of servers and elevators and climate systems you stopped noticing years ago. Outside the glass wall, the city is asleep. Inside, the lights are still on. Your coffee is cold. You drink it anyway. Not because you want to. Because stopping would mean acknowledging how tired you are. You are a mid-level associate. 7 years in. Good enough to be trusted. Not senior enough to decide anything that matters. You know the rules. You know the hierarchy. You know exactly where you stand in it. The email is from a partner. Subject line, urgent. No greeting. No explanation. Just urgency. You open it. A $1.4 billion acquisition. Cross-border. Regulatory pressure from 3 jurisdictions. Financing already committed. Public announcement scheduled. Closing in 11 days. You read the message twice. Not because it's complicated, because you're calculating the cost. Sleep lost. Weekends canceled. Plans erased before they happen. They want you on the deal. Immediately. You close your document. You don't hesitate. You don't do that anymore. 3 years ago, you were careful. You measured every word before speaking. You reread emails 5 times before sending them. You asked questions slowly, cautiously, afraid of sounding unprepared. Back then, you thought competence meant perfection. Now you understand something different. Competence means speed, clarity, judgment under pressure. Now you speak less. You understand faster. You see the structure before anyone explains it. You recognize risk before it becomes visible. At 3 in the morning, you start reading the purchase agreement. Page after page. Definitions. Schedules. Representations. Disclosures. Most of it is routine. Language repeated from hundreds of deals before. But you aren't reading for routine. You're reading for the one sentence that changes everything. By 6:45, the sky outside begins to lighten. You haven't moved from your chair. At 7:10, you are in the conference room. The room smells faintly of carpet cleaner and stale coffee. A screen glows at the front. Legal pads are stacked neatly along the table. The client is already there. Chief Financial Officer. General Counsel. 2 external advisors dialing in from different time zones. Everyone looks tired. Everyone looks tense. Money does that. You take your seat. You open your notebook. You listen. The issue isn't legal. It never is. The issue is risk disguised as paperwork. Pressure disguised as deadlines. Fear disguised as confidence. There are liabilities. Unreported. Buried inside subsidiary disclosures. Not illegal. Not fraudulent. Just incomplete. Misaligned disclosures between jurisdictions. Numbers that technically reconcile but don't tell the same story. You recognize it instantly. You've seen this pattern before. A company growing too quickly. Internal systems lagging behind expansion. Executives assuming small inconsistencies will stay small. They rarely do. The partner glances at you. A silent signal. Speak. You sit up slightly. You keep your voice steady. Calm. Controlled. You explain the risk clearly enough that no one in the room can ignore it. If the disclosures remain inconsistent, regulators can delay approval. If approval is delayed, financing conditions may expire. If financing expires, the deal collapses. Not because of law. Because of timing. Silence follows. You can feel it settling across the room. Everyone is doing the same calculation. How fixable is it? The CFO asks the question carefully. Not defensive. Not emotional. Just direct. You answer without hesitation. Fixable, but not without cost. Additional disclosures. Revised indemnities. Stronger liability protections. Possibly a price adjustment. You don't sugarcoat it. You don't dramatize it. You deliver the reality exactly as it is. That's all they need. By noon, you are rewriting the deal. Indemnities, representations, liability caps. Every word matters now. Every comma has consequence. Because once this closes, nothing can be undone. You work through lunch. You don't notice. Food becomes background noise. Time becomes irrelevant. The only thing that exists is the document in front of you. A paragraph about environmental liability. A sentence about tax exposure. A definition that determines who pays if something goes wrong 3 years from now. This is what corporate law actually is. Not courtroom drama. Not dramatic speeches. Precision. Control. Responsibility, measured in millions. By late afternoon, your inbox begins filling with revisions. Comments from opposing counsel. Questions from the client. Requests from the partner. Faster. More aggressive. Less tolerance for negotiation. You understand what changed. The client wants certainty. More than fairness. Certainty is expensive, but uncertainty is worse. You adjust. You remove protections. You reinforce positions. You tighten timelines. Not because it's right. Because it's required. Because deals don't close on principles. They close on decisions. At 11:13, you send the draft. Your finger hovers over the keyboard for half a second. Then you press send. No pause. No relief. Another email arrives almost immediately. Subject line, revised version, before morning. You stare at the screen. You feel the fatigue in your shoulders, in your eyes, in the quiet ache behind your forehead. But you don't complain. You don't negotiate. You start again. Weeks pass like this. You stop measuring time in days. You measure it in closings. Deal 1. Deal 3. Deal 9. Each one blurs into the next. Different companies. Different industries. Different numbers on the cover page. But the pressure always feels the same. You learn to live inside urgency. Your calendar becomes a battlefield of deadlines. Conference calls stacked back to back. Drafts arriving faster than you can finish reading them. Red lines covering entire pages in dense blocks of text. You stop asking when things will slow down. They don't. Instead, you adapt. You read faster. You write sharper. You decide quicker. You begin to notice patterns other people miss. A clause that shifts risk too quietly. A definition that changes liability without announcing it. A deadline that looks harmless until you calculate the consequences. You develop instincts, not academic knowledge, not theoretical expertise. Instincts, the kind that come from making hundreds of decisions under pressure. The kind that form only after you've been wrong once or twice and paid the price for it. Your name starts appearing in emails. At first, it's small, copied quietly at the bottom of threads, included as support, assigned to technical questions. Then it changes. Clients begin writing directly to you. Short messages, direct requests. Can you review this? Do we have exposure here? What's the fastest way to close? You notice the shift immediately. Not because anyone announces it, because responsibility moves toward you. Responsibility always follows competence. You don't celebrate. You don't react. You just answer. 2 years later, you lead the room. Higher floor. Same glass walls. The view is better now. The furniture is newer. The table is larger. But the pressure feels heavier, because now the outcome depends on you. You walk into the conference room early. You place your laptop on the table. You review your notes one last time. You take a slow breath. The room fills quickly. Bankers, executives, analysts, lawyers from 3 different firms. Everyone talking at once. Everyone pretending to be calm. You sit at the head of the table. No one questions it. You speak first now. You define the strategy. You decide what matters. You determine what risks are acceptable and which ones are not. The law is still there. It always will be. But it's no longer the center. The center is risk, timing, leverage, control. A deal comes in. $3.8 billion. Hostile acquisition. Public company. Aggressive buyer. Defensive board. The media is already speculating. Investors are already reacting. The stakes are visible to everyone. You understand immediately. This one matters. Not just financially, professionally. Reputations are built on deals like this. Careers are defined by how they end. You sit alone in your office late that night. The city lights stretch across the horizon. Traffic moves slowly below. Your reflection stares back at you from the window. You open a blank document. You start designing the structure. Quietly. Defense mechanisms to slow the buyer. Disclosure requirements to protect the board. Positioning strategies to maintain leverage during negotiations. Every step planned carefully. Not to win. To survive. Because hostile deals are unpredictable. They shift quickly. They escalate suddenly. They collapse without warning. You prepare for all of it. The negotiations begin the next morning. Conference calls stretch for hours. Voices rise. Positions harden. Deadlines move closer. You remain steady. You listen more than you speak. You wait for the moment when clarity matters most. And when it arrives, you act. You propose revisions that reduce exposure. You adjust timelines that preserve flexibility. You create options where none existed before. Slowly, resistance weakens. Not because you overpower the other side, because you outmaneuver them. 19 days later, the deal closes. Faster than expected. Cleaner than it should have been. No lawsuits. No regulatory delays. No public conflict. Just a signed agreement and a quiet announcement. Your name isn't public. It never is. Press releases mention executives. Headlines mention CEOs. Investors mention shareholders. Lawyers remain invisible. But inside the firm, everything shifts. Partners start calling you earlier in the process. Clients start requesting your involvement before problems appear. Junior associates begin asking for your guidance. You are no longer evaluated. You are relied on. That difference changes everything. The calls increase. Private equity funds looking to acquire competitors. Banks financing billion-dollar transactions. Founders preparing to sell the companies they built from nothing. They don't ask if you're available. They ask how soon. How soon can you review this? How soon can we close? How soon can you get on the call? Speed becomes your currency. Reliability becomes your reputation. You stop counting hours. Because hours don't matter anymore. You can work 12 hours or 20 hours. The result is the same. What matters is the outcome. Only outcomes. Only consequences. One decision can move hundreds of millions of dollars. A single sentence can shift risk from one party to another. A single oversight can erase months of work. You carry that awareness with you. Every day. Every night. Even when you leave the office. Even when you sit at dinner. Even when you try to sleep. Your mind keeps running calculations in the background. What happens if the regulator rejects the filing? What happens if the financing falls through? What happens if the disclosure was incomplete? You learn to live with uncertainty. Not comfortably, but professionally. Tonight, there is another deal open. There is always another deal open. The office is quieter than usual. Most lights are off. Most desks are empty. Most people have gone home. You remain. You sit in front of your screen, reviewing the latest draft. Page 52. Section 7.3. A clause is wrong. Subtle. Almost invisible. But wrong. The language shifts liability in a way no one intended. A small drafting error. A misplaced phrase. If left unchanged, it could cost the client millions. Maybe more. You lean closer to the screen. You read the sentence again. Then again. You confirm your instinct. You fix it. You rewrite the clause carefully. You adjust the definition precisely. You check the cross-references twice. You save the document. You send it. The email leaves your outbox at exactly 11:47. For a moment, everything is still. No calls, no messages, no alarms. Just silence. You lean back in your chair. You close your eyes for a few seconds. Then your phone lights up again. Another client. Another decision. Waiting. You pick up the phone without hesitation. You listen. You ask 2 questions. You provide 1 answer. Clear. Direct. Final. You end the call. You check the time. 11:52. 5 minutes have passed. The market doesn't stop. Companies keep buying. Investors keep selling. Boards keep negotiating. The work doesn't stop, and neither do you. Because this is what you became. Not all at once. Not in a single promotion. Not in a single deal. But decision by decision. Clause by clause. Risk by risk. Until one day, without noticing when it happened, you realized you weren't just practicing corporate law anymore. You were shaping outcomes no one else could see yet. You were the person executives called when the stakes were highest. The person partners trusted when the timeline was impossible. The person responsible when failure was not an option. And tomorrow, before sunrise, before the markets open, before the first email arrives, you will sit down again, open another document, read another contract, make another decision, and the cycle will continue.